Hey guys, this is Zach
and Pierce
from the Rolling Times, and we're here to show you how to set up sag.
Alright, first off, you want to have a pump, whether that be a fancy floor pump like this or a portable shock pump that you can get at your local bike shop.
So the first thing you want to do, set up the rear shock. Now whether you have Fox shocks, Rock shocks, Manitou, whatever brand it is, you want to set up that air spring. And setting up sag is getting the air pressure right. So there's a couple different ways you can come up with that air pressure. Some shock and fork companies have air charts listed right on the fork or the shock. Most of them, if not, you can find online. Now the thing is, depending on the angles of the suspension linkage and everything, that chart might not be right for every bike. So this is just a method to set it up. If you don't have a chart, or if you just want to, it's always going to be different. This is how I get it right every time without looking at the chart. I usually start with rider weight in the rear shock. So Pierce, how much do you weigh?
140 pounds.
Since his scrawny butt weighs 140 pounds, I'm going to put 140 pounds of air pressure in that rear shock. And that's probably not going to get it perfect, but it's a baseline for us to start. So Pierce is going to do that right now.
Right now we're reading 150, so we're going to take a little bit out.
Alright, so we dropped it from 150 to 140. Whoever was on here last probably weighed a little bit more than Pierce, which is most. Now, once you set that pressure, what you want to look for here, have a O-ring here. Sometimes they're missing or broke off or whatever. You don't need the O-ring. There's other ways to do it, but basically what you're looking for, you want this O-ring to travel 20 to 30% with your rider weight on it, and 20 to 30% of this entire travel here. So that's going to be different depending how much travel you have, but you can add this up and divide it by 4, and that's 25%, so that'll get you right there close. If you have it set at 20% with your rider weight on it, the shock's going to be a little bit stiffer. And if you have it set more like 30%, and I'm just eyeballing it, that's going to be set up a little bit softer. So depending where you're riding, what kind of conditions and stuff you ride in, what bike you're on, you may want to set that up differently. But generally, if you're not sure, 20 to 30 or somewhere in the middle, like 25%, is a great place to start. Some of this stuff you won't know to change till you ride more and feel the way the bike reacts. Basically zero out this O-ring, set it right up against, have Pierce get on the bike. He's going to put his full weight on it. He's going to get in his normal riding position. He's going to bounce up and down on the bike a bit, get the shocks moving, get that front fork moving, kind of get everything moved around, and then just settle down. And then you're going to reach down, because since he was bouncing around, the O-ring moved farther than where it's sitting. So we want to slide that back up to the shock, and then he wants to gently get off the bike so he doesn't push the shock down anymore. So now you notice the shock came back up. And if we look here, the O-ring moved maybe 15%. So it's probably set up a little bit stiff for him right now. And now we'll go back at it. We'll drop like 5 PSI. If you have it close, I want to go more than like 5 PSI plus or minus, and just see where that gets you, because 5-10 PSI can make a big difference when we're talking about the pressure in the rear shock. The other thing I forgot to mention, before you get on the bike and check the sag, you want to make sure your compression is in the lowest setting.
The open position.
You want it fully open. You don't want the lockout on. You don't want it, if it's a Fox shock, it's probably a CTD. You don't want it in the climb or the trail. You want it in the descend mode.
Alright folks, we're going to take a little bit more out here. Let a little bit out. Like Boyer said, probably only about 5 pounds. until you really dial it in.
Now, every time you put your pump on, for that air to fill up the hose, especially like a floor pump like we have, it's a big long hose, that's going to take pressure out of the shock. So if you filled it up and you put the pump back on and it's 5-10 psi lower, it's not that the shock lost that air, it's that it took that much air to fill up the length of the hose on the pump. So ours was substantially lower when we put it back on. So Pierce is just going to reset it at 135. All right, bounce around. You're going to slide that O-ring back up. Now gently, he's going to come off the bike.
We could still probably come out a little bit more here. Still only is roughly about the same. So we'll come off 10 pounds. So we'll put in about 130. I might even drop it down to about 125.
Just to see where it's at. Yeah, we'll try 125.
And just for purposes, I'm just going to use another shock just to show you that this one works just as well.
All right, once more. Hopefully third time's a charm. Alright, hop off. Alright, that looks better. So, here for the third time. I think we got it set up pretty close now. The O-rings traveled about 20%, and I'm just eyeballing that. If you guys want to get more precise, measure everything, that's great. But I've just done it so many times, I can kind of eyeball it and know about where we're at. 20% is going to be on the stiffer side. But anywhere in that 20 to 30% range is perfectly acceptable. That's where you want it to be. And you want to do this before every ride. So setting that up, keeping it in that range is going to prolong the life of your shocks. Not only that, but it's going to make your ride so much better because it's set up right for your weight. So 20%, that's about good. Now we'll move on to the front fork. All right, on this front fork, it does have an air chart. I think every RockShox I know of has an air chart on it.
And the manicures.
If they have that air chart, you can go off of that. Some front forks vary a little bit more, but generally in your front fork, you're going to do about half your rider weight is going to be how much PSI you're going to put in there, at least to get a baseline and see where we're at. One other thing that I forgot to mention here. This is something, if you want to do it before you ride out on the trailhead, you want to have all the gear you're normally riding in when you do this. So if he takes a backpack with him and a helmet and all that stuff when he rides, he might be 10-15 pounds heavier than what he is now, so this stuff isn't going to be quite right. Or if you set it at like 20%, you set it a little bit stiff, till you're all geared up and everything, it's going to still be in that range. It's not going to change that much. So, just for instance here, if Pierce's scrawny butt weighs 140 pounds, we're going to want to put 60 to 75 PSI in there. I'll get a close-up of the air chart here. It's probably upside down for you guys, but that'll work.
Gives you an example of where it's at.
Here's your air cap. Pop that guy off.
It says air.
It does say air on it.
Standard Trader valve.
Yeah, that's a nice looking valve right there. I like the girth. Much better than those silly Presta valves those roadies use.
This works for your road bike too, right, Boyer?
I guess if you have suspension on it.
Alright guys, I'm going to show you here hooking up the pump and what it looks like when you're putting air in, and I'll let you see the gauge here. If I don't drop it.
One other important tip is, if you notice here, we have this nice bike stand we're not using. You want to always do this stuff with the bike on the ground.
Alright, bring it over. looks about right.
Yeah, I'd say that's around 75 right there. Good enough to get a baseline.
Alright, I'm going to jump back on here, guys, and we'll see where this front fork comes down to about. Give it a little bounce. Turn, 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 turn. Push that all the way down there.
And then gently hop off. That's my favorite step. Alright, so with your front fork, that's probably a little bit on the stiff side. We can probably take a little bit out of there. That's probably about 10%. Again, just eyeballing it. Some of your forks too will have markings on them for, they'll actually mark out the percentage of sag on there. That's what those numbers are on the stanchions, if you ever see those. This fork does not have them. So. Alright, we'll give that another try there. I dropped about 10 psi. Alright, go ahead and hop off. Alright, and that's looking about more what we want to see there. And same thing for the fork. You want to make sure your compression is all the way open, not locked out or anything. So Pierce is looking pretty good. He's ready to ride as long as he's not putting any other gear on. That should work out pretty good for him. Thumbs up, Pierce. He's gonna go take a gnarly shred through the shop.
Trails, mate.
And this is actually a pretty dangerous trail we have here. One foul swoop and Pierce could take out $20,000 worth of bikes. When we're bored, we play dominoes here. Alright, one other tip. If you guys don't have an O-ring on your shock or on your fork, there's two things you can do. You can put a zip tie around there. That'll do the same thing. When you're done setting up, you want to cut that zip tie off. If you bottom out your fork or shock, that zip tie can damage the seal. The other thing too, if you have a Sharpie, that won't hurt it. You can mark it while you're on there. It kind of helps if you have somebody else when you're doing this stuff, but if you have something to lean up against, you can kind of manage to do it by yourself on your own. The other thing I wanted to talk about quick too, compression and rebound. So most forks and shocks have a compression and rebound adjustment. Sometimes it's as simple as a lockout. This one, you notice different clicks. You're going to have different settings in the compression. And what the compression does is it stiffens or softens up the shock a little bit more. So you can kind of fine tune it in after you get your sag set up. And then if you look down here, we have a rebound knob on the fork. General rule of thumb, blue is compression, red is rebound. And you see the little
Bunny rabbit with antlers.
bunny rabbit with antlers and a turtle. And what rebound is how quick the shock or fork returns after it goes through. So if you're somewhere really rocky, really chattery and stuff, you want to speed up your rebound, otherwise slow it down. And when setting that up, it's best to find a trail you can do a short loop and keep doing that loop. Do one click at a time and kind of dial it in. Basically, you want it fast enough that it doesn't buck you. When you turn up a click, it's going to feel better and better and better. And then Pierce is laughing. He fucked me up. But yeah, basically you'll keep getting it faster, and at some point it's going to feel like it's bucking you. It's almost going to be like fighting it instead of making you go through it faster. So at that point, you'd want to turn it back a click. On your rear shock here, Fox has the CTD, which is climb, trail, descend, Climb's going to be your stiffest setting, trail's in the middle, descend is your softest setting, and then the rebound is right here, this red circle guy here. So everyone does it a little bit different, but for the most part, blue's going to be compression, red's rebound, and most of your air fork and air shocks are going to have those adjustments on them.
Remember, when you're out there, you always want to wear a helmet and proper safety gear.